Moving on the show, as the federal government plans the disbursement of a World Bank loan of $800 million as a post-petroleum subsidy palliative, experts have faulted this approach, insisting that it might not have the desired effect on the common citizens. One of these experts is the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Dr. Yusuf is asking government to put in place genuine palliatives that will reduce the effect of subsidy removal on the people. According to him, such palliatives should have been segmented to have the desired effect. From the $800 million loan, it's expected that 50 million Nigerians living below the poverty line will benefit 5,000 naira each monthly for 12 months to cushion the planned subsidy removal. Well, Chief Executive Officer of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises again is asking government to segment this palliative into immediate, short-term, and medium-term deliverables to have the desired effect. Well, let's talk more about this and put this into perspective. I'm being joined by no other person than the CEO of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Dr. Yusuf, it's good to have you in the studio. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you.
Yes, I saw your write-up immediately after this popped up, but let me ask you, many will say it should be a welcome development. Many Nigerians want this palliative, but my worry is, how do we really even identify these vulnerable ones and this money does not just go down the drain?
Yes, first of all, the data we have says that we have 133 million Nigerians in multidimensional poverty.
That's true.
Now, from what we are getting from the social investment program, we have been told about a register of 10 million households, maybe 50 million people. But what I will say is that this subsidy issue is one of the heavy liftings that the incoming administration will have to confront. And it's also very, very important that all of us as stakeholders in this economy support the administration to be able to do this heavy lifting in a way that the shocks on the system, the shock particularly on the citizens, will be very minimal. And we should not be too sentimental about it. I'm saying this because this economy is very fragile. The economy is practically on the brink. This economy doesn't have the capacity to continue to sustain this level of petroleum subsidy. So we need to do something about that. So otherwise, we get to a situation where we'll have to now be approaching the IMF, just as is happening in Ghana. And when we get to that point, the conditions that will be given will be much worse than what we have now. So the earlier we're able to deal with it collectively, the better. Of course, there are quite a number of benefits which we cannot overstress. We have the revenue effect. We are likely to unlock between 6 to 7 trillion naira in terms of revenue.
Okay.
And that will go a long way. Because this
yearly,
revenue,
right?
yearly,
okay.
This will go into the federation account. And this is something that will benefit all tiers of government. As I speak to you, many state governments are struggling with the payment of salaries. They are struggling with the payment to pensioners. They are struggling with even their capacity to pay the minimum wage. And in any case, what can 30,000 naira buy these days? And all the victims of all of this weak financial capacity are members of the labor unions. So we should look beyond, the sentiments and all these emotions that it will lead to inflation, it will lead to all these things, and now completely block it. So we have to put all of these things in perspective. Then secondly, there is a major investment effect. We are one of the very few oil-producing countries that don't have very robust private sector investment in our downstream sector. All the things we have in the downstream are practically being managed by the NNPC.
So you think deregulation will open this up?
It will open the space significantly. In fact, the impact it will have on the economy will be much more than the impact that the telecoms had on the economy. Because it's a very big sector, the opportunities are immense, and unless we deregulate, we cannot get the private sector to bring in their capital. Because I've heard the argument from Labour and some other people that before this deregulation can commence, the refineries must work.
I wanted to ask, are we going to have an import-driven kind of deregulation? Because that's what many have argued, that will affect us.
You see, it's a phased thing. It's a phased thing. Because right now, we are insisting that the refineries must work. But the refineries are being managed by the public sector. If it was that easy for them to run it, I mean, this is almost 8 years of this administration.
Yes. 1.5 billion again.
And even before then.
Harcourt.
Yeah, before then we have had series of turnarounds
that have not turned anything around.
And all that these things are pointing to is that the public sector doesn't have the capacity, the managerial capacity, the structure. It's not that we don't have quality personnel. But when you have quality personnel and they are operating within a framework that allows for all manner of interference from the bureaucracy and from the politicians, you cannot get the right outcomes. So we should begin this process by opening up the space for the private sector to come in. And once the private sector comes in, these things gradually will be getting better. Now, the private sector cannot come in today and set up a refinery today. Of course, we already have Dangote and a few modular refineries. But the point we are making is that even at the level of importation, as we speak now, we are not seeing any serious private sector involvement in it. Because NNPC is the sole importer of petroleum products. So that is why when people cite the example of what is happening with diesel, what is happening with aviation fuel within the deregulation framework, and they use that to say that if you deregulate, this is what will happen to PMS. The important thing to drive or to point out is that when you deregulate and there is no competition, you'll be back to square one. So one of the engagements I think Labour and all those opposed to this deregulation should put on board is to insist that there has to be competition. There has to be, robust competition framework, starting with, so that we don't have a situation where it's only an NPC that will be important. Because the best way to protect consumers generally around the world is to ensure competition. If there is no competition, there is no way you can protect the consumers. So we should start from there. We should liberalize access. We should have a level playing field. We should have easy access to foreign exchange by all the operators in the system.
Yes. Because not some getting and some not getting.
Or some getting at 460, others getting at 750.
The other rate.
You can't run an economy like that. So these are some fundamental things, enablers, that we need to put in place so that gradually from there, we get more investors, not just in importation, even in refineries. And to also get investors into that space, in refineries, in pipelines, in fertilizer, in petrochemicals, a whole lot can happen. But we need to also support that within the framework of this creating an enabling environment by the right kind of fiscal policies and monetary policies. So this palliatives or intervention is not just to be limited to giving out money.
It shouldn't just be
it should be more comprehensive so that you have more investors in this space. We can give concessions on import duty on all the equipment that they need to set up refineries, to set up fertilizer plants, to set up petrochemicals, for marketing, for the trucks. Because there is serious paucity of investment in that space. So we need to do all of this in order to encourage more investment. That is on the supply side. On the demand side, we need to also create a situation where we reduce the demand for PMS.
Yeah.
Imagine if you have...
shifting away.
Yes. Imagine if you have very robust investment in the power sector. The demand for all these petroleum products will be much less. Now the power sector investment has now been moved from the exclusive list to the concurrent list, following the recent amendment of the Constitution.
Yes.
That has opened a whole lot of opportunities. And we need to again support this with policy. We should put a lot of attractive policies on the table, incentives for those who want to invest in the power sector, off-grid, renewable energy, solar energy, and all of these things.
So that there's this gradual shift.
The demand, so that the demand for PMS in itself will reduce.
That's another question. Doc, let me just butt in.
Yes.
You continue, please, but I need to just butt in. That's another big one you raised, because there's been that discussion or that argument about what do we really consume as a nation, where we see trucks moving out. Clearly, we see videos moving out of the country. So don't we also need to start from checking the actual level of the number of or the liters of PMS that we consume in a day as a country?
Well, I think it is better, at least to ensure transparency, that we have a proper audit of all of these things. But the challenge is that when you have created a platform that is so vulnerable to corruption, it is extremely difficult to monitor. Even if you put angels there, you will struggle to be able to monitor it. Because there are too many loose ends from where people can make money. And people can easily be compromised. So the only solution is to remove the platform completely. If you deploy security or all this anti-corruption agent to monitor this kind of thing, before you know it, they become part of the problem. We have seen this in the past. So we need to employ policy solutions, not policing the system. There are things you can achieve through policy. Remember the days of NITEL. For you to get a line, you know how people bribe here and there. All these guys that carry ladder, they were like mini gods. But where are they today? Where are they? If you need a line now, do you need to bribe anybody? These are the kind of things policies can do. These are the kind of way policies can transform the system. So if you have the right policies, we can shift demand away from the PMS. I mean, there's this proposal about auto gas.
Yes.
I mean, many of these trucks, rather than incur so much on diesel and all of that,
using gas.
We can come up with policy that will make it easy, very cost-effective, very affordable for people to move their vehicles from the use of PMS or diesel to the use of gas. And we drive that with incentives. Because incentives can go a long way. It can go a long way. Economics is a science of human behavior. Once you put the right kind of incentives in place, the citizens will respond. In India, almost over 10 years ago, even all these tricycles, they have some small cylinders at their back. So as far back as that time, even tricycles were using gas. Not to talk of all these other vehicles, taxis, all of them are running on gas. And we are so blessed. I mean, you just read a report of gas flaring. We are so blessed. We even have more gas than crude oil.
Yes. Proven and unproven reserves.
So these are the things that we can do, to ensure that we make this transition sustainable. And of course, it has to be faced.
Yes, that's where we're going.
Yes,
because
it has to be faced.
It looks like it's going to be, we're biting the bullet, taking it out 100%.
No, it will be difficult.
It will be difficult.
Yeah.
That's the reality on ground.
Yeah.
Because if we take it off, I guess we'll be buying fuel. I'm not an oil marketer, but approximately with my calculation and my understanding, it could be about 400, 450, looking at the exchange rates for now.
It could even be more than that.
It could even be more than that. Someone has even come out to say as much as 750, we could get to that point. So what's your reaction?
No, it has to be faced. And this is why it is also very important that we have very robust engagement. And we should
plannings
have,
and all of that.
yes, and we should have less rigid positions on both the side of labor and the side of the government. And we should have this common vision that in order to actually transform this economy, we need to create a situation where we have investment in this sector. We cannot have such a very important sector, and we are sitting on it. we are not allowing investors to come in. It's a terrible thing. And look at the effect, the wider effect on the macroeconomic environment. Because we are spending so much on this subsidy, because we are not allowing investors to come in so that you can even get more tax revenue, you find a situation where we have this vicious cycle of borrowing. Look at where it has led us. Almost to the point where almost 100% of our revenue we are using to service debt. Now we are relying almost 70 to 80% on CBN financing. These things are not sustainable. And they have wider implications for all these macroeconomic variables, like inflation, like exchange rates.
Yes, of course.
Fiscal deficit. All of these things are connected. So we need to get it right from the very beginning. And I imagine that by now, engagements should also have been going on between the incoming administration, the transition team, and all the interested players. So we should have a phased removal, coupled with the fact that we have more competition. We cannot go along, continue to carry on with a monopoly situation. Monopoly situation doesn't help anybody. It provides opportunity for exploitation. Even with this high cost of diesel and all of that, if you check the landing costs and compare it to the market price, you see a very big margin. And people are taking advantage because they are the only ones importing the products.
The product, yeah.
So we should start from that. And once we start from that, we see the force of competition, driving down prices. Then we move from there to encourage more investment in refineries and in all these other related areas in the petroleum downstream sector.
Let's look at the outlook, removal, phased removal, business as usual. If we continue this way, what are you looking at as we move towards the end of 2023 economically?
If you continue this way, it will make the sustainability of this economy very, very difficult. That is, if you continue
paying the subsidy.
It will make it very, very difficult. And we cannot reform this economy if you don't deal with some of these fundamental things. This is why I call them some heavy liftings. Yeah, heavy liftings that needs to be done. Two big subsidies, foreign exchange subsidy and fuel subsidy. They are our biggest problem now. And the earlier we deal with those issues, the better. Because that is where the reforming of the economy will begin from. Because you can't grow an economy if you don't have investment. You can't continue to go to central bank to be getting funds to fill financing gaps. You have to put an end to all of that. So that's for me is the way to go to ensure that we have an economy that is sustainable and we're able to also stabilize the macroeconomic environment. We reduce all these borrowings and all of that. But I agree, we should have some palliatives. Palliatives in terms of how we can reduce the cost of food, for instance. What are we doing to support those in agriculture? Beyond funding. Because funding alone is not enough. So that the cost of food can come down. What are we doing to support those who are in food processing? Many of them complain of high cost of intermediate products. So these are things we can do to make it easier, for the citizens to be able to cope. Because we need to look at the entire gamut of our tariff policy. What areas of our tariff can we tweak to bring down cost? So it has to be a very comprehensive package, to be able to sell this whole concept to the citizen. But I think it is better for the incoming administration to deal with all this problem of palliatives, the 800 million. In any case, I don't know why we should even be borrowing to be able to pay for palliatives.
Exactly.
Because the whole concept of subsidy removal was also partly to be able to make savings.
True.
So why can't you just, commit part of the savings into the palliatives? I mean, why must you go and incur incur additional debt.
It's an interesting conversation that we'll stay with and continue to see how events unfold.
But we have to deal with it.
Yes, I agree with you.
We have to deal with it.
Dr. Muda Yusuf is the Chief Executive Officer of Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. I'm sure you really got to made a lot of sense around this very topic of discourse. I must thank you for your time today on the program. As usual, we appreciate you. See you anytime soon.
Thank you.